Well, hello, everybody. Welcome along to another special episode of AfriCast, the podcast. My name is Sadiq, and as you know by now, on this podcast, we talk about Africa. We talk about so many things that have to do with Africa. We talk about the development of African institutions, which is the individual and the community at large. So, that being said, today we're going to talk about something that has been brewing in the media for so long, and you know what it is. We are going to talk about USAID. So, without further ado, welcome along to the AfriCast, your favorite podcast on everything Africa. Remember to protect the white if to say, baby, make I give my life for you. I can give my life for you, baby. If to say, baby, make I give my life for you. I can give my life for you, baby. If to say. In recent months, U.S. Congressman Scott Perry sparked international controversy by alleging that the United States Agency for International Development, otherwise known as USAID, had indirectly funded terrorist organizations, including Boko Haram in Nigeria. In his statements, Perry questioned the oversight and accountability mechanism within USAID, suggesting that some of its foreign aid programs inadvertently support extremist groups. Now, these claims drew swift reactions both in the United States and in Nigeria. The U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, Richard Mills, firmly denied the allegations, stating there is, quote, no evidence that USAID funds Boko Haram or any other terrorist organizations. In Nigeria, however, the claims have caused unease, as one might imagine, with some civil society groups calling for more transparency in foreign and aid programs, while others dismiss the allegations as politically motivated. To contextualize these allegations, however, it is essential to understand USAID's history and role. Founded in 1961 under President John F. Kennedy, USAID became the leading U.S. government agency for international development and humanitarian assistance. Its core mission, according to its website, is to promote democratic values, foster economic growth, improve global health, and provide disaster relief. Operating in over 100 countries, USAID has historically aimed to uplift communities while also serving U.S. foreign policy objectives. Programs have spanned from combating diseases like HIV, AIDS, and malaria to improving education and supporting democratic governance. The global perception of USAID is deeply divided, as one might imagine, with opinions ranging from strong support to sharp criticism. The supportive or proponent views or proponents of USAID will argue that the organization has made measurable positive impacts. For example, global child mortality rates dropped from 35,000 deaths per day in 1995 to 13,800 per day by 2021. A success partly attributed to USAID's global health programs. In Nigeria, USAID has been instrumental in initiatives to improve public health, combat malaria, and promote educational programs. Detractors, however, often point to USAID's role in furthering U.S. geopolitical interests,
suggesting that aid is sometimes used as a tool of soft power. Critics also highlight concerns about inefficiency, mismanagement, and allegations of corruption within aid programs. Some argue that by bypassing host governments, USAID undermines local governance, leading to dependency and eroding sovereignty. One major point of contention is USAID's frequent practice of circumventing host governments when delivering aid. This strategy is often employed due to concerns, as they would say, over corruption and mismanagement in countries with high levels of corruption. So, by bypassing government, it helps to ensure the aid reaches the intended recipients. Another point that they would make is efficiency and accountability, because working directly with NGOs or non governmental organizations as international organizations allows for tighter control over fund allocations. Another positive view that they have about the organization is to say that it is politically neutral, that in politically unstable and quote authoritarian regimes, direct engagement with governments can be problematic. And also legal constraints, because the US laws sometimes prohibit direct aid to certain governments under sanctions or with poor human rights records. However, as we've stated before, this approach has its downsides. Many recipient countries view it as undermining their sovereignty and question the long term effectiveness of aid that does not strengthen local institutions. A broader look at this, about the history of aid and the global south. Right? Because Western foreign aid to the global south has evolved since the post World War II era. The Marshall Plan in Europe set a precedent for large scale aid programs, which were later extended to developing nations through bilateral and multilateral organizations like USAID, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, in which we have, glanced or had a cursory view of. During the Cold War influence, during the Cold War, aid was often used strategically, right, for these Western nations to align ideologically against Soviet nations or the Soviet influence, right? Because Western capitalists and democracy is the greatest. Okay, sarcasm aside, these are actual views, right? And in post Cold War, the focus shifted toward promoting sustainable development, reducing poverty, and supporting global health initiatives. According to the Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, in 2022, global official development assistance, ODA, reached $204 billion, with the US contributing around $55 billion, making it the largest donor nation. So the question is aid helpful or harmful? The debate over foreign aid's effectiveness remains somewhat complex. Let's begin with the positives, right? Aid programs have contributed to significant improvements in life expectancies, like child mortality and education enrollment rates. USAID has been pivotal in responding to global crises such as earthquakes, floods, and disease outbreaks. So that is just to name a few, and the opposing arguments, just to name a few, which are not so favorable on these Western aid. They say in some nations, reliance on aid has stunted the growth of local industries and weakened governance structures. And this is according to a study by Loyola University. Foreign aid has, in certain contexts, replaced national savings and undermined domestic investment. Also, Another thing could be political influence. Aid has occasionally been used as a tool for political leverage, leading to accusations of neo-colonialism, just like we intimated or we mentioned in the last episode. And we talk about two wings on the same bird. We have the neoconservatives with one arm, which say, or with one wing rather, who say we need to put our influence on the world. We need to subjugate and subdue the world through force because we need peace through war or peace through strength. And then the opposing side of the bird says we need to use diplomacy. We need to use our soft power. We need to show them how great it will be for them to also want to be like us so they can emulate our institutions and they can have a better life, a great life like we do. So this all leads to this conversation about the global South's dependency or the dilemma for the global South's dependency on Western aid. You and I know the history of the global South and the West. For most of our history, as we can recall, those of us alive, the West has been the dominant force in the world. Thus, the West dictates how a lot of our institutions function. And it becomes very, very difficult for us to not talk about dependency when it comes to aid. Especially if you are one that wants to see all nations thrive, there's trade imbalances. And aid never works, in my estimation. However, let's remain objective, or at least let's be charitable to the opposing view that says aid helps, which, it's undeniable that aid does help, but there's a point where aid becomes harmful, right? The level of dependency on foreign aid varies across the global South. Countries like Afghanistan and South Sudan rely heavily on aid for essential services, while others, such as India and Brazil, have gradually reduced their reliance. Efforts to reduce aid dependency are growing, for example, in Caribbean nations, as they are exploring alternative funding sources to reduce their reliance on volatile foreign aid streams, amid recent cuts from Western donors. The allegations against U.S. aid underscore the deep complexities of foreign aid. While USAID and similar organizations have undoubtedly contributed to global development and humanitarian reliefs, challenges around accountability, effectiveness, and political influence remain present for nations like ours, Nigeria, and maybe South Africa, or maybe Kenya, or maybe Sudan. Foreign aid has been both a lifeline and a point of contention. Moving forward, a more transparent, collaborative, and locally driven approach to development could help balance the benefits of aid while minimizing dependency and external influences. In 2016, I was searching for a way to fund agricultural projects in Africa, particularly where I come from in Nigeria. And a friend connected me to his friend who works or worked, because I don't know if that gentleman still works for USAID, but works for USAID, and he worked for USAID in a South American nation. I'm gonna not say a lot of things. I'm gonna protect this person, because he's a decent guy and he's a nice guy, and also, as I'm trying to get back to my roots of journalism, I also want to protect sources and all of those things. However, as this conversation transpired, the questions at that time, I was reading a book that one of my brothers mentioned to me. Shouts out to Jadaban. He mentioned a book called How Nations Fail, right? And in that, no, sorry, it's not How Nations Fail. It was The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, right? And so you can imagine, as I read this book, a lot of the things that he engages in is talking about how Western institutions go to the global South and the certain type of influences they have, right? And in this particular book, a lot of the themes kept on sticking in my mind. However, so when I was talking to this gentleman about possibly getting funding to start a farm or whatnot, so it was going good, but he was explaining to me how it works, how to get aid, right? Or how to get funding, essentially. Aid, funding, interchangeable, call it what you will. And at that point, I was very much trying to, how do I make this thing sustainable in a way which I can go back to Nigeria and I can just get into farming. So I gave him all the information he was looking for, but then we arrived at this point in which he starts asking me about, do I know any agricultural groups, any unions of agricultural of farmers, right? Like a co-op. And I said no, it's not something particularly that we engage. And as I recall, what I said was farming in Nigeria, from my estimation, or from what I perceived, and from the conversations I've had, you typically is more agrarian and is more like subsistence farming. Is not necessarily to farm at a rate in which someone can take that food and maybe export or maybe sell it at the market. A lot of it, a lot of people that I knew that farmed, especially in the region where I come from, they weren't farming for large scale farming, because in America a lot of people farm. They do a lot of the the corn, the potatoes, the growing of the milk and of the cows to get the milk, the cheese, etc., to get all the produce. They do it at a very large scale. It's kind of more of an industrialized level than we do back home. But side note, this is an opportunity there for those who really want to start businesses and help build African institutions. This is definitely one way that you can do. But as I was talking to this gentleman, he kept on asking me about if I was aware of institutions like that were not affiliated with the government. And that, in that instance, just piqued my interest, right? Because I started to think, it's very curious, because I did recommend, hey, if you need me to be able to, for your own, because again, before I started the entire conversation with this gentleman, I didn't realize he worked for the USAID. And matter of fact, a lot of the information just came like, I kind of pried it out. I kind of figured it out in the course of our conversation, because initially I thought it was a gentleman that had an investment that he was trying to invest in, or that had some capital. Yes, I know a lot of you are listening to this and you're like, Sadiq, you were naive. Yes, I am naive, right? But I was listening to this and I was just curious. My mind kept on being stuck, because one of the biggest things that is important to me is protecting African institutions, meaning African individuals and African communities. Because institution is African individuals and the community writ large. So I was very suspicious of the comment that said, no, we don't need to get any government involved. That's when I jumped to the economic hitman, right? Because in that book, if you never read that book, you should go read it. And you can call it fanciful, but nonetheless, it left a seed of caution within my mind as I was engaging with this gentleman, and we were talking about essentially how to provide aid to Africa and he kept on telling me about how there's an arm of the embassy there that works in this, and essentially it felt like data gathering to me. It felt like intelligence gathering to me, right? Because I'm circumventing my own government to give data and information that doesn't go to my government, but it goes to a foreign entity that is functioning within my country. Which in any other country, that would be a very weird thing to do. It would be weird, which is why Americans are very skeptical of foreign nations here, because uh, that have institutions. They even force you to register as a foreign, all of those things. So I'm sure like all of these institutions, they have their registration and whatnot. This is not a thing to say whether they're good or bad. I'm just giving you my anecdotal experience with USAID. And at the end of the day, I decided it was very suspicious, and I kind of couched it in. There's a conversation that, in the conversation, I said, well, the people I'm talking to, the people I'm asking about all this information which you requested, they are very skeptical as to why they need to form a co-op, and why that co-op then would be giving information and data to the USAID. Now, yes, I'm naive. I was naive. I'm naive, and I'm still not that smart. But in that instance, I was just like, I need to protect everyone involved in this, that gentleman, the people that I'm talking to, myself, and even USAID, because I don't know particularly what they're doing. All of it is speculation, right? But it left me uneasy. And if you know anything about me, if I'm uneasy about something, I don't do it. Even if it costs me, I will not do it if I'm uneasy about it. But if I'm convinced about it, there's nothing you can do to stop me, right? Um, so long, long and short of this story is, I kind of just fizzled that conversation away, but still, that conversation kept on being replayed in my mind a lot of times, and I was thinking, well, of what could have been, and all the fearful stuff started coming to my mind, and I was like, well, could I have done damage, or did I just miss a big opportunity to do something positive for my region in which I come from, of the world? Long and short, that encounter kind of forced me to figure out how to independently fund everything that I'm going to do. Because to be fair to that gentleman, nobody gives you anything for free, right? Everyone is going to require of you something, right? Case in point, the last couple of weeks, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, has been conversating with Putin and also with Zelensky, and he's talking about how, even Scott Besson comes out and he talks about this. You can go watch his conversation on Bloomberg, and a lot of the interviews that he's had since then. They talk about how there are resources that the United States wants and needs from Ukraine, and if Zelensky wants the help of the United States, they need to sign that over, So people are going to require something of you to give you something, right? So, which is, in my estimation, that is fair. At least the terms are out there, right? So nobody pretends like this doesn't come with other things attached to it, right? And so it's only fair. However, for you that is in need, you need to figure out how to fund these things yourself, because I got to warn you, dependency will kill dreams. Dependency will kill institutions. Dependency will not get you to the freedom in which you are seeking. And this is why I think inadvertently Trump is the right guy for Africa and for the global South. Matter of fact, if you are a hawk, right, in the United States, Trump is the worst guy for you, right? Because his ad hoc approach, his just going around breaking things approach, is essentially breaking the American institution globally. And Trump supporters do not recognize or realize this, that the Western hegemony, that the hegemony the United States used to have, is being eroded by Donald Trump. So if you are China, you are loving this and you're going to keep quiet. Let him do whatever he's doing. If you're Russia, you're going to love this. Let him keep doing what he's doing. If you are a member of BRICS, you're going to love what Donald Trump is doing because he's pulling back all the things. He's going retracting America into isolationism, right? So he hasn't done it militarily yet, So the first step of you seeing that doing it militarily is if he starts to shut down bases globally. However, from the neoliberal wing of the whole engagement, because that's where the money is, and if we're honest, that's where the grift is, right? This is where the folks like Elon Musk, the folks at Palantir, the folks which is offshoot of the CIA, the folks at all the administration behind Donald Trump. So he's the distraction, right? While the actual guys, all the venture capitalists are going to rob the United States of America. And it's wild to watch, right? So he's the one who is giving his political capital, and he's the smoking mirror. Imagine if there was a robbery happening, right? There's a getaway driver, but there's a distraction right down there. Down the street, there's a fire down there. Everyone wants you to be focused on the fire and not looking at the vault, right? And so that is what is happening in this administration. And if you are anybody in the global South, at this moment, whatever they do, keep quiet. Just don't say anything. Let it happen. If you are China, if you're Russia, you're going to keep quiet. You're going to let it happen. Especially if they start pulling away militarily, because right now they're doing it from the neoliberal side. They're tearing apart the vestiges of neoliberalism, but obviously everyone knows that the military industrial complex, which is the official arm of the hawks, right, the neocons, right, that is the thing that is going to be very difficult to break down, right, because there's an entire economy and industry that has been developed. And, you can tell anyone about morality, they might not care. But you touch their money, you will find out, right? So right now, obviously, USAID is that soft power wing of the bird. And a lot of these institutions of aid are being pulled back. And for me, I see it as, listen, Africa, rise to the challenge, right? This is how I see it. I don't see any opportunity or anything that people perceive to be bad. I see it as an opportunity. All I see is an opportunity. I'm an eternal optimist. However, obviously, I plan like a pessimist, right? But I'm an eternal optimist. I just see it as a wonderful opportunity for African institutions. If you say Nigeria, that you are the African giant, rise, African giant, and take your place. All of us are proud Africans. If we truly are people that we say we are, then we should back ourselves. We should back our institutions. You should back yourself as an individual, and you should back yourself as a community, because this is the moment in which you are meant to rise. Dependency does not help you. If every single month you're getting a check from me, you are now my dependent, right? You're not dependent on me. That is not independence. And for those of us that want a true independent Africa, We need to stop asking for aid. We need to stop even taking the aid. We need to back ourselves and say, no, we will do it on the grounds of trade. Trade is how you build wealth. Dependency or aid is how you give away your birthright. It has come time in 2025, unbeknownst to us, who have been provided a big opportunity for us to truly be the giants of Africa. What are we going to do about it? I'm tired of talking about having institutions that are still dependent on Western influence. If you truly are people who you say you are, if we truly are people who we say we are, we need to rise to the challenge. We need to be entrepreneur. We need to have that spirit that says never die attitude, that we are going to be the ones who are going to voyage into this new future in which the future is bright for any African that is bold. If everyone is running to it, run away from it. Be the visionary. Be the visionary. And sometimes it is lonely to be the visionary because everyone thinks you're crazy until you're not. Until everyone realizes, well, you might be onto something. Listen, aid has its place. Aid is like you helping out a family member, right? You're aiding them. And yes, USAID, I understand, is now USAID, right? Like I've said in the beginning, which we always just use it in our lexicon or in our everyday speech as aid. But effectively, that's what they're doing. So the name is synonymous, right? Yes. United States Agency for International Development. But they engage in aid, and aid does not help in the long run. Aid is like putting a bandage on a wound that we haven't treated, right? We're just going to keep on replacing the bandage and we're not going to, and that is going to keep on metastasizing, right, into something worse because we're dependent. If you keep on giving someone every single month money, that person is now your employee, you know? That person is your employee. I want to build a world where we teach people how to fish instead of always fishing for people. No, I want you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and to say, I don't have this resource right now, but what I do have is this mind. And with this mind, I will do something. Yes, we might not have the perfect institutions in Africa. However, we are smart and brilliant and beautiful people. We have the capability to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. Yes, it's going to not be pretty for a little bit, but the future is bright. Personally, I don't like people just keep on giving me stuff. I feel like now I owe you something. Even if you don't say I owe you something, I feel like I do. And that is a difficult place to live in. Dependency is not good, especially not for nations, because we're going to feel beholden to whoever keeps on giving us aid. However, when we do trade, listen, you have this thing that I need, I have this thing that you need. Let's make something that's mutually beneficial and let's go our own separate ways. Let's trade. Let's not have aid. I'm very weary of aid. I'm sorry, it might help here and there, shore up a few things. However, these are our problems. We should find the solutions. We are capable. And sometimes you hear all of this like pride things that we say, right? Oh, we have some of the best doctors. We have some of the. Why can't we develop our own institutions? We can. And don't tell me about government. because one of the problems, and I would definitely engage this in a future episode, where we are also our dependency not just on foreign aid but also on local institutions, instead of building ourselves as strong individuals that when people look at 10 of us, they will say, yeah, that's a strong unit. Because each and every one of us are strong on our own. We are creative in our own right. But we come together for the betterment of our community. That's the future I want to see. So USAID, USAID, United States Agency for International Development, yes, it might be coming onto scrutiny right now, but I think the bigger thing for us to come away from this conversation is to say, personally, I don't begrudge the USAID for doing anything that it does. Whether you think it's great for humanity or whether you think there's nefarious intent, I don't care. I don't blame them for doing the things that they're doing because they deeply believe in the thing that they're doing, right? And that's their own prerogative. But for you, the host nation, I want you to have your own prerogative. That is being independent. I want you to have the thing that is deep to your core, the thing that you stand for, the thing that you believe in. And you need to fund that. We need to fund our independence as individuals and as nations. We need to focus on funding our freedom. Nothing is free. Even the aid you get is not free. It comes with stipulations. So why don't you just go ahead and do your own thing? If you think HIV and AIDS is a problem, fund it. If you think malaria is a problem, fund it. And you say, where are we going to find the funding? Get creative. You're beautiful people. You got brilliant minds. You're telling me you can't fund things like that? And don't tell me, oh, we need to wait for the government. Then for me, you lack imagination and you cannot be my leader. There's no way you can be my leader if all you do is wait on other institutions to solve your own problems. Why should I follow you? Why? Because you lack imagination. When we get into trouble, we're all gonna perish. Because you lack imagination. I want leaders that are imaginative, that they can think broadly, they can analyze things from multiple from multifaceted perspective, and give me something to believe in, something to work toward. And if all you're doing is to wait on things that have happened before to solve your own problems, like, listen, dog, like, I ain't about that. We need better leaders. And I just don't mean within the government institutions. I mean in the private sector. And I will bring up people like Aliko Dangote. That's a leader. That's someone that believed so much in his vision that he decided to go in his people. And I know there's some people that will say, oh yeah, you really champion Aliko Dangote a lot because you don't understand that entrepreneurial spirit. And if you dare come at me and talk to me about monopolies while you still cherish Western institutions, I say that you're a hypocrite. What do you think monopolies are? Amazon is not a monopoly. Google is not a monopoly. Facebook is not a monopoly. Come off it, man. All institutions, even from the countries that you cherish, all institutions find ways for them to have regulation that benefits them. So, but we champion those institutions, we champion those societies. For me, it's hypocritical to make that argument against Dangote while you are praising Western society. We need to build right now. We ain't got it. We ain't got the same level of development that they have. So right now, we need to champion our institutions. There will come a time where the Ahmad Rabius of the world will grow so big to compete with Aliko Dangote. And I can't wait for that future where you might be another person that will rise and you compete with Aliko Dangote. I will cherish that future. Maybe NNPC will get this act together and it will compete with Aliko Dangote. Maybe Oando would rise and compete. And I mean competition with building institutions in Nigeria. Not taking out African resources, right? Especially African hard-earned currency and going to spend it in other nations. I don't respect that. I will never respect you. I want you to figure out a way to bring the money so we can spend it locally. You taking African wealth to go and to invest it in the West doesn't help Africa. And if you do that, I don't know. You're certainly not my leader. Yes, aid is an intention of the West to help. Yes, other people might look at it as a way for these host nations in the global south for them to get ahead. Yes, all good. However, to deny the soft power is to be logically inconsistent and to be frankly hypocritical, right? And I just find that to be intellectually dishonest. They can both be true. It could be, yes, the West has this to show the world of how beautiful their form of democracy is, which is great, you know? Yeah. But also to kid ourselves and pretend like they don't have influence over how those host nations develop, for us to behave like I do, naively, right? As if there's not an intelligence arm to the things they do that could benefit or jeopardize that nation's long-term goals is frankly naive. We have an opportunity here. Let's build ourselves up as individuals, strong individuals, right? That champion a strong community, that we can champion our own institutions. And when I talk about institutions, I'm not talking about just government institutions. You have a business idea. There are so much business ideas. And don't tell me, oh, it's difficult to make it in Nigeria. If you have 1,000 naira, go start a chicken coop. Start selling the chicken eggs. Start selling the chickens. Your savings rate would determine how successful you are. Not trying to get on Instagram to show or whatever social media that you prefer to show or flex on to other people that don't do jack squat. Build institutions, fund institutions. There are other people, and if you don't want to do it, there are other people that are doing it as well. Help them, fund them. We can do it. I truly believe that we can do it. You say health is a problem. Okay, there are agencies, non-governmental agencies from the West that want to work with you. Yeah, go work with them, but be weary, right? Don't just go in blindly. No, work to a point where you become independent and you stop being dependent on them for the success of your institution. That doesn't help you, and frankly, doesn't help them. Matter of fact, it's even beneficial for them to just have like a timeline and say, hey, we're gonna do this for this one, right? And you're gonna take over and you're gonna do it, which is great because it's mutually beneficial. Right? They get the wonderful PR to say that they help the world, and you get to build your own institutions. There's a world out there. I mean, obviously, all of my Niger people, say the sky is big enough for all birds to fly. Don't just get stuck into like this binary zeros and ones or ones and zeros world. No, there are multiple options. Think like a quantum computer. Yes, it doesn't exist anymore, so don't come at me. However, it doesn't exist just yet, right? However, theoretically, you know what I'm talking about, right? Don't just think in black and white. No, your mind is beautiful. Think in color, right? You're creative enough to think in color. So go ahead and think in color. Think beautifully. And today, that is the segment that we have that to start off this podcast. And the next segment, as you already know, is going to be Black Market, where we focus on African companies.
Remember to protect the white and if to say, baby, make I give my life for you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Imagine you're planning a trip from Jos to Lagos. In the past, booking a flight might have been a hassle. You might have limited options, high ticket prices, and possibly frequent delays. But recently, there has been a significant change that promises to make air travel in Nigeria more accessible and affordable. For years, Nigeria was on a global aviation leasing blacklist. This designation made it difficult for our airlines to lease aircraft, leading to fewer planes, limited routes, and higher costs of travelers, or cost for travelers, rather. However, as of October 2024, Nigeria has been removed from that blacklist. This change is expected to open new avenues for our aircraft financing and leasing, which thereby allows our airlines to expand their fleets and offer more competitive ticket prices. With airlines now able to lease more aircraft, expect an increase in the number of flights and destinations. This means more choices for you, the traveler. There's also increased competition, and more efficient operations can lead to reduced ticket prices, making air travel more affordable for everyone. Now, all of them know how Nigeria roads be, so you can just jump it. There's a larger fleet, which allows airlines to maintain better schedules, reducing delays and cancellations. Osita Okonkwo, the chief operating officer of United Nigeria Airlines, expressed optimism about this development. Quote, "The important thing is that Nigeria is no longer on the blacklist. Individual operators now have to discuss with lessors, meet their conditions, and then sign on the dotted lines." This sentiment is echoed by Festus Keyamo, Nigeria's Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, who highlighted the broader benefits. Quote, "This development unlocks numerous opportunities for our aviation sector." Yes, sir. Beyond personal travel, this could also be a positive shift and for the broader economy, right? It could lead to job creations. Expanding airlines needs more pilots, crew members, ground staff, leading to job growth in the aviation sector. It could also lead to tourism growth for more flights and competitive prices, make Nigeria a more attractive destination for tourists, and which can boost local businesses and cultural side. All of them know that is December, it's not just Lagos. There's also Calabar, and hopefully maybe in the future, I saw MI do one in Jos. Maybe, in the future, there might be travel to my beloved Taraba state, but I will just hold on. There's business expansion, which improved air connectivity facilitates business travel and trade, attracting investors and fostering economic development. Think about it, all your possibilities. So, while this development brings optimism, the aviation industry must continue to focus on safety, customer service, and infrastructure improvements for travelers. It's an exciting time as flying becomes more convenient and affordable. So whether it's business trip to Abuja, to Taraba, to Adamawa, to Kaduna, to Calabar, it might just become a little bit more feasible for us to just go on a day trip. Want to go see Obudu Cattle Ranch. Maybe go down to the Mambila Plateau. Maybe go to Plateau State. Maybe go to Bauchi Yankari Reserve. Maybe we go to Gembu National Park. Maybe go down to Lagos. So much that can happen. So it comes at this point in which we focus on our aviation sector. The first flight I ever took was in 9th or 10th grade, I believe. it was from Jos to Lagos. Uh, Shouts out to the Adeyinka Onis because they played for my first flight. Guy, as I was on that flight, I was scared, my guy. Scared. Well, I couldn't let anyone know. I'm sure everyone knew, like this kid from Taraba, this guy never flew on plane before. But it was interesting, because I just closed my eyes when the plane was taking off, and I was like, at that moment, I didn't really think about all that could go wrong. I mean, obviously, everyone has been going on it, and there's a lot of safety, but it had nothing to do with anything else. It's just my own personal fear because I'd never done it before. Flew on the plane, got to Lagos, and everything was fine. Flew back from Jos to Lagos. And from there, and I've flown some numerous times, that it has become so really accessible. And matter of fact, the aviation sector is changing so much, so fast, right? Because there's even talk about Sonic Boom. I don't know if anybody watched the video of that startup. I believe it's called Boom, and because it's like mimicking this, like the sound of what happens when a Sonic plane is going through a country. Usually, even after it leaves the airspace, you hear this boom that comes through. I'm saying all of this to say that there's technology that has been available for so long that we haven't had access to in Nigeria. I keep on wondering why we don't have our own institutions. Why? And we keep on crying about airfares being expensive because we have these Western companies that are coming in and bringing in their airplanes, and then they get to charge us, obviously, like they should, right? Because the incentive needs to make sense to them as well, right? They should. They're trying to make money, so they're charging out exorbitant amounts for airfare. But that only happens because you don't even have your own industry, right? And the industry got tarnished, and this is why I love the president and CEO of Air Peace, Alan Onyema, because for a long time I watched a lot of his interviews, and he keeps on deriding the fact that he has to pay full price for all the planes he has, which is, if you know how capital works, that is ridiculous, right? Because a lot of times it's like, hey, you want to lease that to keep your capex low so that you can be able to make profit, and then also be able to hire and pay people. It becomes very difficult when you have to buy a whole plane, right? Again, this is about credit, right? Because we did, back in our history, we defaulted on a lot of our loans, which companies then decided, hey, we don't want to do business with Nigeria. We're going to put them on this list. You know how credit work if you live in the West, if you're from the diaspora and you live in the West. For those of you who don't live in the West, I don't mean to insult your intelligence, but the way it works is, if you need money to buy something, people are going to go do a background check to see your credit worthiness, and your credit worthiness is going to have a score on it. And if it has a score, then the financial institutions have a certain degree of understanding about who you are so that it can reduce their risk in giving you money, right? And so for industries and institutions like the Nigerian aviation, they will be able to go to said banks, which aviation has its own way of financing, right? But it's the same overarching principles. So you can go to these aviation specific lenders and you can get funding for you to have an entire fleet of aircraft. But then that credit worthiness will keep on being updated frequently based on how much you pay them back, right? Obviously, they're going to have their own little bit of, jara on top for them to be able to make a little bit something, which is capitalism, right? They just want to be able to, if they're giving you capital, if they're giving up something, they want something in return, This is how it works, right? Again, this is not a conversation of whether it is good or bad. This is not a moral argument. This is a observation on how it works. For moral arguments, find somebody else, right? But Nigerian aviation for so long hasn't been able to grow like its counterparts from other places, right? For instance, Nigeria has the largest economy, and we have the most amount of people, but one of the most stable airlines in the whole of Africa is Ethiopian Airlines, right? And it goes everywhere. I know I got family that is in parts of Africa, and they fly Ethiopian Airlines all the time. And you gotta fly from wherever you are to Addis Ababa. From Addis Ababa, then you get to Nigeria, and sometimes it might be like an hour layover. Sometimes it might be 8 hours. You book a hotel in Addis Ababa. Listen, there's so much economic activity that happens from just the travel and from you traveling with with Ethiopian Airlines. And I remember a couple of years ago, and I'm sure you remember, where Ethiopian Airlines crashed. And I know I live down here, and there was a gentleman who flies planes regularly. He has offered to teach me how to fly. I'm just not there yet. Maybe one day I'll hit him up, and I'll be like, yeah, teach me how to fly. But I live in a place where there's a lot of military base, and then there's also a lot of aviation. There's an international airport. There are schools that teach people how to fly, and then there are the individuals that have their own personal hangar, and then they also on their ranch they have like their own runway and etc. Right? So they have offered, and also for crop dusting and what. There's other industries that spring up from this. Point of this conversation, or for me telling you this anecdotal evidence, is just to talk to you about how a lot of people in the West view Africa, right? So it might have been just a regular old liberal guy, a little bit more like, and he had this perspective. As soon as that airline crashed, that Ethiopian airline crashed, you know what happened, right? To absolve themselves of blame, Boeing went out and said it was the poor education of the pilots. You and I know exactly what that means, right? You as an African and I as an African, we know exactly what that means, right? We get looked down upon because apparently when you are of a certain hue, right, your intelligence is not as good as someone from another hue, right? So when you perceive it must have been the fault of the pilots. And you know what I loved, and I even championed it then, because I was having this conversation with this gentleman. I was like, well, we will find out very soon, right? We will find out very soon. Because what did the Ethiopian authorities do? They said, hey, nobody touch that plane. Don't touch that black box. And they took it to France. I believe is the people that develop bombardiers and whatnot. I think that's the name of the company. And they got an independent study of what happened to that plane, and they concluded it was not the fault of the pilot. But that was already in the ether. People already have this perspective because the lie goes around the world fast before the pants before the truth gets one leg of his pants on. And that is how African institutions for so long we are viewed as incapable of running our own institutions. We are accused of being intellectually inept. We are accused of so many things, right? And so when it comes to our institutions, at times we are the ones, funny enough, that even feed into that narrative, that keep on giving fuel to that fire, to that critique of us, or to that criticism of us. Because defaulting on your credit is not a good thing. If I was in Nigeria and I have capital and I'm lending it to somebody, right, I want to have recourse to be able to say, yeah, this is not good. Like, we had an agreement. I held up my end of the bargain. You did not hold to your own end of the bargain. We need our institutions to say, yeah, you are wrong. You need to pay me back, right? We need recourse, right? So for all these lenders that are even going into these markets, right, and they are willing to risk all of this, they need a way to be able to recoup some of that money that they're investing in these burgeoning or institutions, right? Or this like infant, nascent institution or economies like the global south. If you're going to borrow from them, you need to hold up your own end of the bargain, because there's even a bigger thing that is happening, right? Because it's not just about you as an individual. When you go to the West, you're black, right? When you go to the West, you're black. And as you're black in the West, whatever you do is going to be used against every single African. So, yes, this is the highest standard that is required of us. I take it as an opportunity. I take it as a challenge. I ain't got time to wait to prove somebody or to like cuddle someone's emotion. No, I'm just gonna behave in this way. I'm gonna behave in a way that's even better than what you expected. Because I don't want to tarnish the image of another person that looks just like me. Yes, it's unfair. Yes, it is. But we gotta move. We must move. We must do it. Take on the challenge. Don't whine. Don't cry about it. Take on the challenge and reach your goal. And that's the thing, right? And that's why I respect Alan Oyema. Like, because he took up the challenge. He said, okay, y'all ain't gonna give me the money. Well, I'm finna fund this thing myself. He was imaginative, he was creative, and he did it. Yes, it cost him, but he felt so deep in his gut that this is what he needed to do to make sure that air peace is that thing that all Nigerians will be proud of. And I gotta tell you, sitting from where I'm sitting here in South Texas, I'm proud of that man. I'm proud of a Nigerian that stood up and said, yeah, that was the challenge. That's the mountain I gotta climb. And he climbed that damn thing. And now he can even build a bigger institution. And now more options will even be available for Nigerian aviation sector. More options. There's a gentleman, I forget his name, but as I'm just spitballing here, he came to America. I think he studied under Boeing, or was it Lockheed Martin, and he went back to Nigeria. He has his own hangar, I believe, in Abuja and in Kaduna, and he's training, and they're trying to find funding to be able to have hangars in Nigeria, to be able to build planes in Nigeria, right? And he's found it difficult to even find funding within Nigeria, and now it's gonna be easy for him, right? Because think about all the airplane companies that come into Nigeria. Imagine if you had a local player who was helping them fix their planes instead of having to fly it off to Germany. I remember a couple of months ago there was the government jet that from some country in the south of Nigeria that was held up by the German government because of unpaid dues, right? I just find that ridiculous. Why? Because they flew it all the way to Germany to get it. To get something checked, and then it was caught up because of back on unpaid bills, right? Same thing that's happening in China, same thing. So imagine if we had a local player, it saves you all that expenditure, all that capital you have to be spending to ship your planes or to fly your planes all over the globe to get it serviced and then to be brought back. If you have a local player with a local hangar that is technically trained at the highest level, right? At the highest international level with international standard. And they can do it in Nigeria. They can hire more Nigerians. That is building a local economy. And that is what we need to do. We need to build a local economy. So while this funding is great, it's going to allow individuals like the CEO of Airpeace to be able to get the funding he needs to even expand his reach, not just across West Africa. And that's another thing that really hurt me probably a year or two ago when Cote d'Ivoire wouldn't allow his plane to be able to go into Cote d'Ivoire, but they would allow planes from France. It's asinine. And these are the things that we need to get rid of, right? This like looking down on other African countries, right? I get it. Locally, they want to be able to, if if the thing was, hey, we're only gonna support Cote d'Ivoire Airlines, great. Well, maybe Air Peace can make a deal with Cote d'Ivoire Airlines, right? And say, hey, we have all these passengers that are going to be going to y'all. We can fly them to Benin. And you can take them from Benin. And you can fly them all the way. Like you can create an entire network in which is mutually beneficial. But to reject an African company from coming into your own airspace, only to turn back and to accept one that is coming outside of the continent, or that might have local footprints within West Africa, right, to fly to all the Francophone nations, that is asinine to me. That is ridiculous, right? We need to start learning to support our own local. We need to start having a mindset that says, no, this is what we need to support here in Africa. So obviously, Nigeria is the giant of Africa, and it's time for Nigeria to rise. And Nigeria is going to rise by building its own industries. We don't need to be dependent on aid anymore. We need to start developing the economies, to trade one another, to build economies. And there's so much opportunities that even comes from this, right? For an individual like me, I have so many ideas. And the thing about ideas is, and I'm sure you, the listener, also have so many ideas of things that you can do. But tourism is one of those things, right, that airlines will open you up to. It always baffled me that Nigerians would get all the money and go spend it in like Dubai or go spend it in like some Western country, right? When you can just figure out, hey, how can I direct all these funds to my local economy? If you keep the money longer within your own economy, it will be so much better for you. It will be so much better for everyone around you. So why aren't we doing that? You will even make more money. But taking your hard-earned cash to go spend it in countries thousands of miles away, it's baffling to me, right? And if you are in a country like that, if we were having partnerships with these international institutions, then yes, I'm for that. But if it's just like, oh, they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart, the goodness of their heart, miss me with all that nonsense. I want them to trade with us. We need to partner on something, or we need to not. You know, we need our local industries to be supported by us. We need our local industries to be supported by our government. We need our local industries to be respected by the international institutions and within that market that they play. And so, yes, I am happy about this, and only time will tell how well this is going to go. Yes, and the challenge is up to Nigerian airlines, right? This is the time where you need to rise and you need to show the world that you are capable. I don't know why I have to buy a plane ticket from Delta to fly from Houston to go to Nigeria, or to buy a plane ticket to go first to Europe before I get to Nigeria. Houston has got some of the highest number of Nigerians. You can have direct flights from Houston all the way to Lagos every single day. You can have it all the way to Abuja every single day, or you can have it to Lagos. Then you have connecting flights from Lagos to Abuja, or vice versa, or to Kano, or like there's so many options. I don't know why I got to fly all over the world before I can get home. That's just giving funds to those nations when I can give funds to my own nation directly. Come on, man. So I am happy about this development, and I hope it starts to build other institutions. And if you are a business inclined mind, you can start to think, hey, maybe I should start getting into hotels, or maybe I should start getting into tourism, or what am I building? That we have so many game reserves, right? Like there are just so much business opportunities that can happen from this, right? Because no longer would it be just air travel. You got to build something for people to want to go to, right? So then the economic activity will start moving to you. Like I live in the great state of Texas, and there's so much that's happening in this state of Texas economically that makes people want to move to Texas. It's wild, right? But Texas has built something that allows people, like, think about it. Some of the highest number of Fortune 500 headquarters, they headquarter here in Texas, right? And so everyone wants to come to Texas, right? It's just, I mean, obviously California is like the largest economy. So California has also built it, and so many people are going to California as well, right? So if you are in Nigeria, we have the largest amount of people. We need to start building our own economies. There's so much that we can do. So much that we can do. We just, in my family, we have this saying that we always say. We say sometimes it's baffling, right? My sister and I talk about this a lot. That is like kazayazo na kan rumbun dawa begane, but so loosely translated is like a chicken is standing on top of grains. He doesn't even realize it, right? It's like we have so much opportunity for us to develop as people. We have so much opportunity. We just don't see it, right? And it's because we lack imagination at times, man. And that's the thing I get back to. We lack imagination. And for you that have imagination and you have decided to move back to Nigeria, I champion you. I love you. I love that for you. And for those of us that are in the West and we're planning our move back to Nigeria, man, let's keep on planning our move back to Nigeria. Let us keep on investing in Nigeria. Let us keep on investing. And if you're listening to this and you're not from Nigeria and you're moving back or you are living in the West, like, I hope you keep on investing in Africa one way or the other, that you have your eyes set on investing in Africa, right? Because Africa is the future. One day people will realize this thing. I'm not just saying it. Like, if all the world is coming to you to get your resources, you got something. Sorry, you got something that they all want. How about you take advantage of that thing? It's time for us as individuals, those of us that are in the private sector, to do our own part, and those of us of you that are in the public sector, it's time for you to also represent us, to like protect us, protect local industries, because every other country is doing it. Every other country is doing it, so why not us? Protect our own local institutions. My friends and I, everyone in the Bight of Benin, we have this thing that we say: remember to protect the Bight of Benin. And remember to protect the Bight of Benin is like this notion that for a long time, African persons, African resource has been taken out of Africa. So it's high time for us that are in the diaspora to start returning these resources back to Africa. Be it through art. We need to return the benefits of these resources back to Africa. Be it through our intelligence. We need to return these benefits back to our beloved motherland. Be it through our products, our inspiration. Just remember, like, Africa is beautiful regardless of what people tell you, man. When you've lived in the West for more than 5 years, you know exactly what I'm talking about, if you're honest with yourself. Africa's beautiful, man. Let's give people something to believe in instead of always giving into the fear. There's people that will always give into fear, and good on to them. I'm not a fearful person, man. I'm just not. Very pragmatic. Invest in Africa. Build African institutions. Love it, cherish it. And for all of you that are listening, I hope you just do one thing for me. I hope that you remember to protect the Bight of Benin.
Remember to protect the Bight of Benin. If to say, baby, make I give my life for you. I can give my life for you, baby. If to say, baby, make I give my life for you. I will give my life the story goes that when Halima and Chukwueze came together, their unity was bonded by love. And soon after, Bolaji came into the picture. And so Chukwueze, for his love with Halima, decided to show her that he cared about her. And so he started to fight for her dignity. And Bolaji decided to also fight because she was beautiful beyond measure. And so the story goes, no one went home with Halima because they both came to their demise. Abi no be so? Na so.